I need to tell you something. I don't think I can keep pretending that Marcel, I think I'm attracted to you. I think I am gay.
It's okay, you are not gay. I am actually a woman. My name is Marcel Devon Whitfield III, or at least that's the name that's been on every business card, every contract, every Employee of the Year plaque at Whitfield Industrial Supply since I was 22 years old. My actual name is Marceline. I should probably explain. My great-grandfather started this company out of a single hardware store in Cleveland in 1961, and by the time it reached my father, Marcel Devon Whitfield II, it was moving industrial fasteners and machine parts to half the manufacturers in the Midwest. There was one rule baked into the company's founding documents: older than my father, older than his father. The business passed to a son, not a daughter, a son specifically by name in the actual legal language of the family trust, because my great-grandfather had apparently had very specific opinions on who was capable of running heavy industrial logistics, opinions that nobody in 3 subsequent generations had bothered to update. My mother, Denise Whitfield, found out she was having a girl 4 months into her pregnancy, sat with that information for exactly 1 evening, and then made a decision that would define the next 26 years of my life. Nobody was going to tell my father. Your father was already halfway convinced the company was cursed after 2 miscarriages, she told me once, years later, with the specific bluntness she reserved for conversations that mattered. I was not about to hand him a 3rd disappointment when I had a much easier solution available. The solution was me, raised from birth as a boy in every way that mattered to the outside world: a name, a wardrobe, a haircut, a childhood spent being coached gently and constantly in the specific physical and social mannerisms my mother had decided a Whitfield son needed to have. It sounds, said out loud, like an insane plan. It also worked for 26 years, largely because nobody expects a lie that audacious, and because my mother was frankly a genius at logistics of her own kind. I want to be clear that I wasn't a passive participant in any of this by the time I was old enough to understand what was happening. By 13, I understood the stakes. By 18, I'd made my own peace with it, not because I loved pretending, but because I loved the business, genuinely, completely, the way some people love music or basketball. And the only door into that love ran directly through the identity my mother had built for me. My father died 4 years ago. I inherited Whitfield Industrial Supply, exactly as planned, and doubled its revenue in 3 years flat. The complication that actually threatens to unravel 2 decades of careful work, arrives in the form of Jaewon Soo, CEO of Soo Precision Manufacturing, our closest regional competitor, a man I have been locked in a genuinely brutal supply contract war with for the better part of 18 months. He is, and I say this as someone who has spent considerable energy trying to not notice, extremely handsome, sharp, composed, irritatingly good at negotiation, with a habit of looking at me across a boardroom table like he's already 3 moves ahead in a chess game I didn't know I was playing. He is also, apparently, under the impression that he might be developing feelings for a man. Jaewon's been asking about you, my business partner Andre told me one afternoon, with the specific grin of a man who has stumbled onto something delicious. Like asking. His assistant mentioned it to my assistant. He thinks you're interesting. We're locked in a supply war, I said. He thinks I'm interesting the way a chess opponent finds you interesting before they checkmate you. That's not the vibe I'm getting. The vibe I'm getting is considerably gayer than that. I want to be honest and say I did not immediately understand the scale of the misunderstanding I was operating inside of. I understood slowly over the following months, watching Jaewon Soo become progressively, visibly flustered in my presence in ways that had nothing to do with fastener contracts, lingering eye contact across conference tables, a noticeable increase in the frequency of accidental run-ins at industry events, a specific quality of attention that eventually became too obvious to misread. It came to a head at a supplier gala, 6 months into whatever this had become, when Jaewon cornered me near the bar with the particular nervous energy of a man about to say something he'd been rehearsing. I need to tell you something, and I need you to know I've thought about this very seriously, and I understand it complicates our professional relationship considerably, but I don't think I can keep pretending I don't. He stopped, started again. Marcel, I think I'm attracted to you. The bar around us continued its ambient noise. I stood there, holding a glass of wine, watching a man I had genuinely started to have feelings for confess to feelings for a person who did not, strictly speaking, exist. To be honest, I almost laughed because he was looking at me so awkwardly, and the entire situation was just really funny. Jaewon, I said, very carefully, there's something I need to tell you too. It's going to sound insane. I need you to let me finish before you react. He blinked. Okay. I am not a man. The silence that followed was genuinely one of the more spectacular silences I have ever been present for. I'm sorry, Jaewon said. Can you say that again? I'm a woman, I said. My whole life, since birth. There's a whole family trust situation. My mother made a decision before I was born. My father never knew. It's an extremely long story, but the short version is, you are not attracted to a man, Jaewon. You are attracted to a woman who has been performing an elaborate, decades-long disguise for reasons that made complete sense inside a very specific family logic, and increasingly less sense the longer I tried to explain them out loud at a supplier gala. Jaewon stared at me for a long moment. So, I'm not gay? Oh my God, I am not gay. You were never gay. I've spent 4 months quietly panicking about my sexuality over you specifically. I understand that must have been a very confusing 4 months. Confusing doesn't begin to cover it, he said, and then unexpectedly started laughing. The real kind, helpless, the specific laugh of a man releasing 4 months of accumulated anxiety, all at once. I bought a book, Marcel, an actual self-help book about navigating a late-discovered sexuality. It's on my nightstand right now. I am so sorry. Don't be sorry, he said, still laughing. This is genuinely the strangest and somehow most relieving thing anyone has ever told me at an open bar. He looked at me properly, something shifting behind the laughter into a quieter, more serious attention. Are you actually you right now? This isn't some other version of a lie. This is me, I said, for the first time, honestly, in a very long time, in front of someone who isn't my mother. What I had not accounted for in the relief of that conversation was my cousin Terrence standing 4 feet away, having arrived at the bar at some point during my confession and having heard, by his own gleeful admission later, every single word. Terrence had wanted Whitfield Industrial Supply his entire adult life. He'd been passed over twice, once for me directly, and once earlier when my grandfather quietly decided Terrence's temperament wasn't suited to running anything more complicated than the loading dock he currently managed. He'd spent 4 years watching me run the company he believed should have been his, and I understood the moment I turned and saw his face exactly what he intended to do with what he'd just heard. He did it 2 weeks later at the company's annual shareholder dinner in front of the board, my mother, half the regional business community, and Jaewon Soo, who was invited as a professional courtesy neither of us had anticipated becoming a witness to a public detonation. Before we move to the financial report, Terrence said, standing up mid-dinner with a champagne glass in hand and the specific theatrical confidence of a man who believed he was about to become the hero of his own story, I think there's something the board should know about our current CEO. Something that changes, I'd argue, everything about the legitimacy of this entire leadership structure. The room went very quiet. Marcel Whitfield is not a man. I want to describe the silence that followed, but there isn't a word large enough. 200 people, mid-dinner, absorbing a sentence that made no immediate sense and then gradually, horizonally, did. That's not a joke, Terence continued, riding the momentum before anyone could interrupt. This entire company has been run under false pretenses, in direct violation of the founding family trust, and I think every person in this room deserves to know that before another dollar of shareholder value gets attached to a leadership claim built on a lie. I stood up. I had exactly one plan in that moment, which was to survive the next 30 seconds without my voice shaking, and I am proud to say I mostly succeeded. "He's right," I said, into the stunned silence. "I'm a woman. I have been my entire life. My mother made that decision before I was born, because the family trust specifies a son, and she was not willing to watch this company pass to someone outside the family over a technicality neither she nor I asked to be born into." The room, if anything, went quieter. It was my mother who spoke first, standing slowly, her voice carrying the specific steel she'd built an entire hidden identity out of. "I made that decision," she said, "alone. Marceline did not choose this deception. She inherited it, the way children inherit the most impossible decisions their parents make on their behalf, and she has spent every day since proving she deserves this company on merit that has nothing to do with the gender listed on a decades-old trust document." "With respect, Aunt Denise," Terence said, "merit doesn't erase fraud." It was my father's voice, or rather a memory of his, that answered him, because my father wasn't there anymore to answer for himself, and someone had to speak for what he actually would have said, and the person who did it was unexpectedly standing at the far end of the table. Jaewon Soo stood up. "I run your closest competitor," he said, to the room, to the board, to Terence directly. "I have spent 18 months in direct commercial conflict with Marceline Whitfield, watching her out-negotiate, out-strategize, and outperform every projection my own team has thrown at her. I did not know until 2 weeks ago that she was a woman. It changed nothing about my professional respect for her, and I would suggest it should change nothing about yours either, unless the actual objection here is not fraud, but a specific discomfort with discovering that the person who has been beating you at business for years happens to be someone you didn't expect." The room held its breath. My mother spoke again, quieter this time, directed at me specifically, though loud enough to carry. "I need to tell you something too," she said, "something I should have told you years ago." I looked at her. "Your father knew," she said, "since you were 18. I stood there, feeling the floor shift beneath an entirely different revelation. "Your father found the original birth certificate in my desk when you were in your first year of business school," my mother continued. "He came to me. He was furious initially. Not at you, at me for the decision I'd made without him. We fought for weeks. And then he watched you, Marceline. He watched you finish top of your class, watched you negotiate your first supplier contract during a summer internship, watched the specific way you talked about this company like it was already yours in every way that mattered, except paperwork. And one evening he told me he'd decided the trust was written by a man with considerably less imagination than his granddaughter, and that he wasn't going to be the reason a company built on hard work got handed to someone less capable simply because the founding document hadn't accounted for the possibility of you. I felt something break open in my chest that had nothing to do with the 200 witnesses currently watching me process this in real time. I said, "He knew. For 8 years, he never said anything. He wanted you to have every year of confidence building this company as yourself, on your own terms, before the truth became a variable anyone else got to weigh in on," my mother said. He told me right before he passed that the proudest moment of his life wasn't finding out you were his daughter instead of his son. It was watching you become exactly the person capable of running everything he'd built, regardless of what name was on the paperwork. The dining room was silent, 200 witnesses to a truth that had apparently been quietly settled between my parents years before any of us knew it needed settling at all. Terence, for his part, had gone very pale, his champagne glass still raised for a toast he never got to finish. The board voted 3 days later to formally amend the family trust language, striking the word son and replacing it with language a lawyer assured us was, and I quote, gender neutral in every legally binding sense that matters. Terence resigned from his position at the loading dock 2 weeks after that, taking a job at a competitor considerably less prestigious than either Whitfield or Sue, and I have not heard from him since, which I have decided is an acceptable outcome for a man who tried to detonate my entire life in front of a shareholder dinner out of jealousy, dressed up as principal. Jaewon and I merged our companies 18 months later, a genuine, negotiated, extensively lawyered merger that neither of us pretended wasn't also deeply personal, given that we'd been dating, at that point, for over a year. I still have the book, he told me, the night before our wedding day, both of us sitting on the floor of our new shared office going through supplier contracts, because apparently even our wedding eve wasn't sacred from industrial fastener logistics. That's deeply strange, Jaewon. It's a great story at parties, he said. The time I thought I was gay for 6 months because the woman I loved was disguised as a man for structural business reasons. People never believe me. I don't blame them. He looked at me, the specific warm look I'd learned to recognize over 2 years as the one he saved for moments that actually mattered underneath all the industry jokes. For what it's worth, I would have fallen for you either way. Man, woman, whatever paperwork existed at the time. I think some part of me already knew that at the gala, before you even said anything. I think that's why I was so confused. I wasn't confused about my sexuality. I was confused about how someone could feel this specific and this certain, regardless of the version of you I thought I was looking at. I married Jaewon Soo 6 months later, my mother giving a toast that made the entire room cry, in which she said plainly that she had spent 26 years protecting a legacy and somehow, along the way, had raised a person extraordinary enough that the legacy no longer needed protecting, it simply needed to get out of her way. Whitfield Soo Industrial Group is now the largest fastener and precision parts supplier in the Midwest. Run jointly by 2 people who met as enemies, misunderstood each other spectacularly, and built something neither of their family's original rules had ever accounted for being possible. My father's memory sits somewhere in every decision I make for this company. Not the father who followed an outdated rule, but the one who quietly rewrote it in his own heart 8 years before anyone else caught up, and simply waited, with more patience than I ever gave him credit for the rest of the world to arrive at the same conclusion he'd already reached. If you loved watching Marceline finally get to be exactly who she always was and still win everything anyway, smash that like button, subscribe for more K-Afro narratives, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Terence deserved a redemption arc, or did he get exactly what was coming to him? Was Jaewon just actually gay? See you in the next one.